this idea that you had of the politics of the poor people, the politics of the boulevard, and the politics of the plaza and the stairs. You know, we have this, the boulevard, the portico, the stairs, and the plaza.
Looking at the Prado, the porticos kind of filter the city, and in a way that they function, give shelter to the programs that are embedded in the buildings, and at the same time filter the people in the zone that would allow people to travel on the same side, so they can experience kind of both things. And in the middle of the street, there's this boulevard with a little bit extremely kind of like separate itself from the street, and kind of like a walkway. So you have like kind of 5 different walkways, like the shelter part of this building, the existing part, the cars, the boulevard, and repeat itself.
Okay. So explain about the concept of exchange.
So my idea of politics was that it was based on the notion of exchange between people, and if it involves like authority and power and a notion of hierarchy between different groups of people, I thought that architecture would be the way to provide more like levels of exchange between those people and allow more interaction to happen. For that, I decided to use architecture to foster these interactions, and to do that, I decided to play with movable parts and kind of blur the boundaries between different parts of architecture, like the walls, the roof, the like ceilings, the doors, and the windows. Kind of by blurring those boundaries, I would bring people together and make them interact physically, to then kind of interact socially, and bring them to discuss about ideas and exchange on those ideas.
Who's making politics through design?
Basically, it's the encounter of both. It's the complementarity of the action of an architect and the will of the people that is going to create an architectural movement or space. Because if a space is designed without being used, then the architectural intensity that's put into that place or ideology won't be achieved.
So it could be the case that without people, it is still a political statement.
It is a political statement in itself, yes.
What is the political statement?
It's by putting the sugarcane fields and the tobacco, which is today a commodity in Cuba, in relation with those huge governmental buildings which you don't find any relationship to in Cuba. So just by putting those two and looking at the difference in scale, in color, in nature, in everything, you get the sense of how different this plaza is and what image it's portraying, contrary to the tobacco and sugarcane.
Can you tell us a little bit about your design in the emergency wall? How you proceed, how do you see politics there, and just...
So I try to bring back this notion of the existence of windows and openings towards outside by bringing back in a geometrical term to the inner skin of his office. But I didn't want to impose any openings to make his point of view like in a positive way, but kind of just to as a reminder of what. So in my project, I basically try to invert the notion of the cleanness and the neatness that Cuban governments try to apply to its governmental building, to bring back the reality of the existing condition of the city, the
tell us a little bit how you work in relation to politics through your design of the door and the wall?
It was trying to, it was as well control about speed and mobility and politics, trying to understand why nowadays we are going in a world where it's more and more in movement, and how the architecture try to adapt to this new world, these new thoughts, and how with control, why do politics use the movement to control the people nowadays, and how as well it goes the other way around, how in movement we try to go away from, try to escape.
What is the relationship between politics and communication through your design?
Through my design. Politics, it's all about communication, through informal communication, trying to, so they could get back into the politics and not be a part, which at the beginning was creating a community which everyone had the right to talk and to say what they wanted, which is not happening anymore, and so it's more trying to get back the people into the politics and trying to create platforms of communication between the government and the citizen.
The production of consumption.
Yeah, well, basically, my project is looking at production and consumption as a way to create this correspondence, as the kind of the tool or the way to.
How are you challenging that in your project?
The way production and consumption works now is very very top-down organized by the government, and is basically every person in Cuba is employed by the state and is paid a salary by the state, has to produce for the state, so there is no kind of individual earnings, benefits, or any individual ambition for people to make something, to push ideas forward. And so the idea of the project is to introduce a capitalist strategy, or introduce more the ideas of capital in a combination with social ideas of gathering that are very present in Cuba. So, and in a way to combine these ideas to create, on the one hand, people who are very passionate and have a lot of ambition for what they do in order to produce for their own benefits, to be able to create a sense of wealth and a sense of ownership, and on the other hand, in order to still incorporate social ideas of sharing, of gathering, of social collective events, etc.
Interference between two either conflicting or complementary groups. It means that each of the side is challenged by the needs and demands of the other, and it means that nothing remains static and everything is changing all the time. So within Cuba, right now the government is very static, but the only parts where the everyday lives of the people actually influence their situation is with informal activities happening in the city, and it's because their everyday lives are interfering with the formal infrastructure that they are in.
How do you see it in the architecture, the interference? Should it dynamic or?
Well, interference within architecture, I think it's through a design that allows people to participate with the design. So it's a bottom-up design, and it's not top-down, and it means that rather than imposing a formal, rigid structure or rigid concept, it allows for the behavior of the people to sort of influence the way the shape is structured. So in that sense, their actions interfere with the space.
How is in your design of the shopping mall?
In the shopping mall, I placed the shopping mall in front of the Ministry of Internal Affairs within the Plaza de Revolution because this is such a place that symbolizes the power that the government has over the people, and I want to distort this power and give the people the freedom, the feeling of freedom, by putting a shopping mall which totally contradicts everything that the Plaza stands for in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. From the outside, I want to make it look like a place that is desirable to enter, and I'm doing this through the materiality and the form of it. It's much more organic and transparent than the harsh facades of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. However, when the people are inside, they come into this trap, and on the inside, the people feel that they're trapped.
Okay.
Your idea of dialogue.
Okay. For me, I started kind of being really interested in the idea that sometimes people's kind of confrontations or dialogue, it doesn't always have to be pleasant, but then in itself it produces some kind of result, you get some kind of product out of it. So I mean, usually what didn't like about other kind of political concepts was that they were utopian and that they expected that everybody's going to get along and somehow everything is going to be perfect and there's going to be world peace. And in a way, I kind of slowly realized that when you have people living together that are completely different, then they have to kind of form these collectives and then live under some kind of conditions and make some kind of common decisions and have disagreements and have conflicts. And in a way, what is the opposite of politics to me is when people can't disagree or they can't have a kind of dialogue. So that's why I kind of, in terms with Cuba, I realized that the fact that supposedly everybody supports the government was something problematic, because there's no way that everybody would support the same ideas. So that's what kind of drew me. The idea that somehow there should be some kind of disagreement, some kind of conflict or tension within Cuba.
Okay, you can talk a little bit about your design in the plan.
Yeah, so basically how I'm going to implement this concept into design. I want to create an art center in a very closed place, as Plaza now is a highly political center, and I want to make a tension in between politics and art, because traditionally and historically speaking means politics and art, they're always in opposition to each other. It's kind of two extremely confronted notions, and that's why I'm kind of going, because now the Plaza is a separate buildings which are floating in the air, and I'm going to recreating the Plaza and putting another buildings in between existing ones and enclosing its perimeter. And using the condition of Cuban politics, it's that the artists, they are allowed to do whatever type of art, and they're allowed to do projects and their art as long as they do it at their home. It means that this art center should be home for these artists, where they live, and that's why in my proposal there is lots of workshop and artist studios and artist residency alongside with the exhibitional space, for artists to be able to inhabit this space 24 hours and to generate 24 hours activity. And another underline of the project is to break in, like using again this revolutionized freedom to break the rules of the normal museum practice. It's kind of breaking the walls of normal museum space, which consists of separate rooms, which are somehow connected but usually having white walls and all these neutral spaces where you look only at the art.